The year is 1990. Final Fantasy III has swept the nation of Japan on the Nintendo Famicom, but it never came to the West. Neither did 2, until that was ported to the PS1. But 3 was never ported. It was remade on the DS in 2006. That's the version I played. It's gonna be weird to review this, considering, what's that, a 16-year difference in times that these two games were made. But nonetheless, I think the remake reflects a lot about what made the original good and bad, and we'll get into that. I got my notes, and I'm ready to go. First note, Moogles. We got Moogles. The second game gave us Chocobos. Third game, Moogs. The little white bear guys with the little red balls on their things. Antenna, what is that? I don't know what that is. What's this next note? Oh, Sid update. We got a Sid update. Sid's back. He's a stout, chubby old man with a white beard. And he talks like, "Oh, you youngsters are gonna save the world. And I'm here to support you. I'll be there for you." He's like a supportive old man. In the second game, he was like a pretty prestigious, like, "Oh, yes, I have invented the airship. I might let you use it." But in this game, he's like got a wife, and you help him get back to his wife, and he's like, "I'm just gonna stay with my wife. You want my airship? Okay, sure, if it's gonna help save the world. I mean, far be it from me." Oh yeah, speaking of chocobos, they were gonna turn chocobos into weird, pink, hairless, bird-like creatures. It was in the concept art when you beat the game, and I was like, what is this? I'm sure they don't regret not doing that. So I wasn't a fan of Final Fantasy II. Why? Because the gameplay was just so awful. But here we are in 3. What did they do to improve it? Let's get right into it. So EXP is back, but there's also an additional whole nother element called the job system. I don't know if this was the first game to do a job system kind of thing, but it must have been one of the first. What that means is you can change your costume of any character. You can wear all sorts of different hats. And when you do, it's like a whole nother class that you get to play as. You got your warrior. You start out with like the 4 basic ones you get in the first Final Fantasy, and then it expands and expands and expands. There's a ton of different classes to play as. Each hat, each costume is a new deal, a new strategy, and you can mix and match, and that's cool. Here's the thing. You have a level for your character, all 4 of your party members, and you have a job level, which is a separate leveling system that I'm not sure exactly how it works. It might just be XP, but that levels up separately. Now, when you change classes, of course, your job level resets back to 1. So what happens is you unlock more classes as you go, and there are certain classes you have to really play as for certain parts of the game. You talk to NPCs and they're like, "Oh, you gotta beat this boss. Legend says that only a dragoon can defeat him. I'm not sure what that means. This book says literally you can only hurt him as dragoon." Just throwing that out there, guys. So then you're like, okay, I gotta change all my party members to dragoon, and I barely have equipment or armor for them, and they're all gonna be level 1. So that was a thing that I struggled with throughout this game. I read a lot of guides. Basically, whenever I unlocked a new job, I researched it, and most of the jobs you look up have forum posts of a bunch of people saying, "Oh yeah, that one sucks. That one's kind of good for like a little bit, but then endgame, it's just not good." So it's like, when do I switch classes? Because my guys are like level 50 in the job level. Am I supposed to restart? Because you get jobs that are basically straight upgrades to old jobs. So you're like, I guess I have to switch? But I'm not sure if I do. Like I had the white mage, and the guide I was reading was like, so your setup should be a dragoon, a bard, or this and that. And if you happen to have a white mage, in parentheses, those are obsolete by now, make sure you just use the I'm like, okay bro, I'm sorry I didn't play like you. My white mage served me damn well throughout that playthrough, thank you very much. But you unlock like a new class called the Devout, which is like a white mage, except they do higher spells. So it's basically just better. So I did upgrade to that. Now, one of the classes I had throughout the whole game was the Monk, which is just like a fist fighting attack dispenser. They do the damage. And I unlock a ninja, a thief, and a black belt job, and they all do relatively the same thing, but like better. But by the time I unlock these, I'm already training as the Monk, and all the guys are like, yeah, but black belt's better. Maybe in the long run, black belt will be good. And then another guy says, you might as well just stay Monk. And I'm like, I don't know. When you reach level 99 in the job level, you can unlock like a special equipment item that only goes to them, which is neat. So I stuck with Monk, and I was doing like 10,000 damage each round, so I guess I don't regret that. Maybe this game's easy because it's a remake. It's in 2006. Maybe the original was harder. It definitely was. So yeah, that's the battle system. It's pretty good. It's an improvement. It's by far an improvement over the second one. But there were just a couple issues. I wish I could mix and match the classes more easily. But whenever I was tempted to change, I was just like, what's the point in this? I'm training a class I'm either not going to use in the long term, or I'm abandoning a class that I do want to use in the long term. So I just kind of mostly stuck with the 4 basic ones. I had a knight, a white mage who became a devout, a monk, and my 4th guy I did change a little bit, but eventually he became a bard because bards are OP in this game. But how about the quality of life improvements? Ooh, boy. I know these came with probably mostly the remake, but I gotta say, it's pretty cool. You beat a boss and your party is healed. Ooh, that is so good. I don't gotta worry about maintaining cure spells or anything like that. Dying to like tiny enemies after I went through such a hard battle. I'm all healed up. Another thing, auto battle. This definitely was only in the remake, but you press a button and your party attacks for you. What that means is whatever you last told them to do, they're just going to repeat again, so they'll go in a loop. And let's be honest, in a JRPG, when you're fighting random enemies over and over, you're probably doing the same thing. So turn that auto button on and they're just going to attack and you'll be done, and it speeds up the process. Oh man. Imagine like every battle in a JRPG you save 1 minute. That adds up. I beat this game in like 25 hours, which is significantly less than Final Fantasy II, so I think that had something to do with it. In the last game when you had a guest, first of all you had 3 party members plus a guest. This game you have 4 party members and a guest is not really part of your party. They just kind of come in and do a free attack or a free heal. They just help you. You don't have to equip them. You don't gotta worry about leveling them. They're just there and they help. Love that. Summons are in this game. I'm talking Bahamut. I'm talking Ifrit, Shiva, Leviathan. The gang's all here. I'd never used a single summon because it's tied to a specific job class, the summoner. Didn't like him. Sorry. Oh, you can use items again in this. So, what I didn't mention about Final Fantasy II, another terrible thing, is that you can't just use an item in battle. They changed that. In the first game you could. In the second game you had to like equip 2 items to your party members, and they can only use that for the whole battle. And then you gotta equip another one or something. It was horrible. And this game brings that back. You can just go to the item menu and use anything you want. What a concept. Why did they mess that game up so bad? What was wrong with that game? Not only that, but you can have item storage. There's like a bank in this game. Because, you know, there's so many different equipment items for different armors, weapons, equipment for all the different classes, and you're not going to use all the classes. But it's nice to hold on to them just in case. But if you don't want your inventory filling up, there's a fat chocobo you can talk to. Yeah, you get like special beans and you go to a tree and you drop the beans and the fat chocobo comes and you feed it your items and he eats them and goes, thank you. So that was cool. It's no secret that some spells in these games are just completely underused, and this game takes some of those spells and makes you use them for interesting reasons. You can use mini in the overworld, and there are certain spaces where you have to because there's like a mouse hole or something super small you gotta get through. So you use mini on your entire team. And mini is a bad effect. You don't want to be mini in battle. You take more damage and you deal less damage. So you're basically forced to use mini because you gotta go through small areas and you have to deal with it. You need to use magic because your physical attacks don't work, so it kind of adds a little bit of spice to wild battles. You gotta figure it out more, maybe change your class to a more magic-based user. Something like that. I like that a lot. It was kind of underused, but it was a cool idea. At one point in the game, you unlock your very own airship. Like, it's a big airship you can actually go inside. It's not just for travel. And it's got its own bed, it's got its own shop, it's got its own fat chocobo. It's your own little home base. That was super cool. But the ship is ridiculously slow. I don't know why they would do that. Like, the old ship was super fast, and then you get one that's very slow. Why do you have to balance that? Why can't I just have fun? Could've just made it fun. I feel like JRPGs do that kind of thing a lot. Like, just make it fun. You could just make that one fun. Not a big deal if it goes fast. I don't know. But anyway, that's a nitpick. Story. We haven't talked about story. This, if you don't know, is part of the Crystal series of Final Fantasy games. Basically, certain games have a center point of the story. It's always about these crystals. The first game was, the third game was, not the second game. You got the 4 Warriors of Light. They go on a quest to find the crystals or something like that, and they gotta defeat the darkness and create a balance between the light and the darkness. If that sounds like the most generic JRPG story you've ever heard, you are right. This light and dark thing, I did not know. I'm pretty new to JRPGs, but apparently light and darkness just doesn't stop being the main focal point. I'm so bored of that already. I mean, you could do a story about light and darkness, but just make the characters interesting, you know? The characters in this are not interesting. I think in the Famicom game, they were supposed to be swapped out with different jobs, so they didn't give them too much of a personality. But playing the remake and seeing like better graphics, but their faces are always they're just completely blank. They kill a boss, they reunite with each other. It's just, yay, you're back. Okay, now we need to go and get the next crystal. Like, they look so boring. I don't like the art style of the remake. I'm a fan of sprites. So this one's in 3D, but it's DS 3D, so it doesn't look that good to me. It's kind of lame. The story is what I just said. Collect the crystals. I don't even know who the villain is. That's like a consistent problem. Make the villain known. The villain's fun. You gotta get to know the villain, see how he's a threat. They don't even really give you a villain until near the end. And then he's just kind of this faceless monster guy. The second game, I complain about it a lot, had the best story. That had like environmental storytelling. It had dialogue options. It had like a Darth Vader Palpatine villain situation. This game's just like back to light and darkness. Like, the lack of retro charm, I think, really does not do the story justice. By the time this got to America, Final Fantasy XII was out. So like, we had our share of pretty epic stories. Not that I would know, this is the third one. So the game was pretty easy, but probably because it was a remake. Still difficulty spike in the end. I don't know what's with these games and saying, oh, it's the last dungeon, it's gotta be super ridiculously harder than everything else. 2 dungeons again. Basically 2 hours. It's got tons of enemies, big enemies. You gotta fight bosses. Always gotta give you like 4 bosses before the final boss. And the final boss itself is another spike in difficulty. If you die in the final boss, it's 2 hours lost. And if you can't beat him, like because your strategy is wrong, you've trained the wrong jobs, it's a couple more hours of grinding out those new jobs, right? Why? This is what I don't get sometimes in JRPGs. You have freedom, but in reality, you gotta choose the job that works. You don't really have that freedom. It's like a false sense of freedom. Again, it's not that crazy. In the original, there was like one strategy that worked for the final boss. Again, I held my own through most of it pretty well. I had that monk, 10,000 damage a pop. He was pretty good. My knight was defending. My devout was healing. My bard was buffing. We were a balanced team. Regardless of what forum posts said to do, I was pretty good. So I feel good about that. And with that, we leave the NES trilogy. We're done. It's a milestone. We've beat a whole system. So that's cool. Moving on to the 16-bit era. But we gotta make a few pit stops before then. We got the Game Boy. We gotta do some more Game Boy. So, but trust me, it's gonna be a great ride. So, stick with it. I give Final Fantasy III a pretty good. I think it's the best one. It's the best one. I don't know how to end these videos.